So now we will do a call to order. Good afternoon, as our virtual meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. I think everyone knows that we repeated that this meeting is held in accordance with the Municipal Act 2001, and City Council has authorized virtual meetings with its committees with its members. City Clerk, do you want to do a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So members of the committee, I will be calling your names. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Dillon.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Paleshi.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Willens.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Vasante.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Santos.
Hello.
Thank you. And Chair Medeiros, all 10 members are present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item to today's meeting? If yes, please use the chat function in WebEx to add your name to the speakers list. I don't see anybody. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini to approve the agenda, that the agenda for the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 26th be approved and published and circulated. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Meetings of municipal councils are to be open to the public for transparency and accountability, and our meeting will continue to be as well with a few precautions and limitations. In-person attendance at this meeting is very limited. Members and most staff are participating electronically in this meeting. The public can still access or participate in the meeting in a number of ways. Watching this meeting remotely through the city's live stream and playback of the archived video stream, registering with the city clerk's office as a virtual delegate to participate in the meeting, and registering to attend the meeting in person to observe the meeting. Submitting questions about the agenda, business, and decisions made by council today, emailing the city clerk's office at cityclerksoffice@brampton.ca with your question, which may be read in the public meeting record during a 15-minute public question period before the end of the meeting. Also, continue to follow important service and public health updates through the city's website at www.brampton.ca, which will include updated information on the city's response, as well as links to other important sources of information, including Region of Peel Public Health, Province of Ontario, and Government of Canada. A final reminder for members of council, before we start to consider today's agenda business, please ensure your video is off and microphone is muted. This will help ensure only one person is speaking at one time and minimize other background disruptions. Now we move on to declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? No. Okay, the clerk will so note for this meeting. Our next item is consent motion. I believe we have one item, and I do see there is Councillor Paleshi. Would you like to speak?
Mr. Chair, just to consent, are you at consent?
Yeah, I'm at consent.
Okay, my apologies. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add 7.4 into the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have 7.3 and 7.4. Anyone else? No? Okay. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Paleshi to approve the consent motion that the staff report regarding initiative zoning bylaw amendments to clarify and improve residential development standards citywide in the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 26th be received, that the zoning bylaw amendments attached to the report as appendices 1 through 7 be adopted on the basis they represent good planning, and that the growth for the Horseshoe, the Region of Peel official plan for the reasons set out in the plan recommendation report dated September 20th, and the council hereby determined that there no further public notice is to be given pursuant to 3.4.7. So just my apologies, City Clerk. Did I read a motion which is out of, just reading my notes here, and I see a motion, does that relate to the consent motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So if the motion is just to approve 7.4 and 7.3, that will take care of it.
Okay, great. So is there anyone opposed will be counted in the affirmative? No? Okay, there's no objection, so the motion carries. Statutory public meetings, we have no statutory public meetings. So we now go on to public delegations. Item 6.1, amendment to business licensing bylaw 332-2013, amendment to the definition of lodging house and schedule 17. I will ask the clerk if there are any written delegations or requests to delegate at today's meeting regarding this matter.
Mr. Chair, there are none that have been submitted to the clerk's office.
Okay, as I see there are none. Then I believe we have a motion moved by, let's say, Councillor Williams.
So, Mr. Chair,
yeah.
you can just move on, and we can deal with the
Okay.
item under 7.2 as there's nothing to receive.
Okay, great. So we'll go our next item then is staff reports, and we'll hand it over to Rick Kennard, who has a presentation. And the presentation is regarding the technology improvement roadmap.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, members of committee. I appreciate the time today to go through this discussion with you. This presentation is meant to address a request from council earlier this year, just prior to summer, to address concerns of getting written documentation back to the residents and contractors with respect to deficiencies in the inspection process. So we're taking advantage of the opportunity, I think, to give you an overview of all of the things that we've done this year, as well as give you an idea of what the roadmap looks like going forward into next year. So Peter, if we can just get into the next slide, and this is an older version of the slide deck. So I apologize, but there was an updated one to October the 16th, but hopefully this captures the majority of what we had intended to include. So this is just a brief summary of some of the things that we did over the course of this year, and I just want to stress that it's been really impressive that our staff, in partnership with IT, has been able to. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, that's better. Has been able to accomplish some of these feats. Our core business in the building division, of course, is building regulation, construction regulation, which really is all centered around the safety of people. And historically, the industry that we're in is fairly slow moving in terms of the use of technology. And so in a very short period of time this year, with the introduction of COVID-19, our group, again, with a lot of support from IT, has been able to accomplish some phenomenal feats. So I'll just go through the slides here and highlight some of the things that we've been able to accomplish this year. Peter, if we can go to the next slide, please. This is just a brief glimpse at the revamped website that we put into place. Obviously, we needed to maintain a business continuity for our industry, and in order to do that, we've created much more user-friendly tiles so that when you land on the building division webpage, you know exactly where you need to go in terms of our services, whether you're a homeowner, a builder, or looking for two-unit dwellings. Everything is outlined for you right there to make it nice and easy. Peter, if you can go to the next slide. The online record requests is this is a culmination of a couple of years worth of work. I want to say about 2 years ago, we started on this project to digitize all of our property records. If anybody's been to the building division, our lower level has stacks and stacks of property records that maintain all of the information that we collect over the years that has related to construction or building permits or even compliance issues that relate to a specific property. And about 2 years ago, we made the realization that we're moving to a much more digital world, and we need to start acting that way. And so we took out a capital project back in 2018 to digitize all of our files. And it's remarkable how much progress we've made in that 2 years. I think close to 70% of our files have been digitized at this point, and that's allowed us to move those services online. And so, again, very fortuitous considering the current situation with the city closures. We're able to maintain business continuity in terms of access to our records through this online request. So this one was launched earlier this year and has been used quite frequently. As you all know, the activity levels with respect to our second units are astronomical, and with almost every one of those applications is preceded by a request to the records to see if there's any information there about the existing layout of the building. So that's been a very highly used service. Next slide, Peter. The online applications, again, something that, we actually started a project to go online with our applications back in 2014. And to make a long story short, things derailed slightly, and we chose to go in a different direction in terms of upgrading our business solution prior to going online. So earlier this year, when the announcement was made that the facilities would be closing, we obviously knew that we needed to, again, maintain some level of business continuity. So we were very quickly able to turn around an online application form to facilitate the application of building permits throughout the closure of the building division. And this is the first phase. I want to stress the first phase in that project. There is no integration with our back-end solution, with our back office solution, Amanda. Everything still is being ported over there manually from SharePoint into Amanda. But this phase one, to provide some sort of online interface for the public and for contractors for residential and 2-unit applications, has allowed that business to continue. Next slide, Peter. Quickly, on the heels of the online applications, we instituted a online request for inspections. Again, with the closure of the offices, we weren't set up to be working remotely immediately, and we certainly didn't have all of the facilities to allow calls to be taken, from home at our staff's private numbers. So this was an obvious next step. So we were able to implement a request for inspections online, again, within the first few weeks of the closure. Next slide, Peter. The Skip the Line queue management solution, I think, is being used across the city now as the de facto appointment booking system. The building department actually, the building division, I should say, piloted or set out to pilot this program with IT last fall. And so the reason we were putting this in place is that we were at times having lineups at the front counter that were 40 to 50 people long. And, we realized that this was not a good customer service solution to have people wait at our front counter for hours with the possibility of not even getting their application in by the end of the day. And so we needed a good solution to manage that crowd and how we would provide a better level of service. So we started developing this queue management solution with IT. And IT was phenomenal with us in developing the solution. I have to say, Elir's team has been, they've gone above and beyond to provide us a high level of service to roll this out. But it's a really remarkable solution. And Peter, if you can go to the next slide, I think there's a bit of a walkthrough on how this works. But this solution allows us to offer appointment-based submissions in person, from the comfort of your home. So as you can kind of see, there's an initial screening to see what it is that you're coming to the building division for. We have the ability to ask you a few key questions to make sure that you're prepared for the appointment. You have all the documentation you need. And then you can select, from a number of days, what the best time for you is to come in throughout the day based on what is available. When the when the applicants arrive at the front doors, they are able to send a message through a link that's provided to their cell phone to let us know that they're here, and then we go out and greet them and bring them in for an appointment. Now, again, this originally was meant to be a management solution for the walk-in crowd that we were having, but the introduction of COVID-19 and the closures, it's certainly become the forefront solution to taking in appointment-only service, and I think that's the safest approach for residents and our staff alike, and it's been a very useful tool. Peter, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so the GeoHub is something that we've had out for a few years in terms of being able to publish permit information on our website. So you can go onto the GeoHub and you can enter an address in the upper left-hand corner, and it will bring up all of the information that we have in the building division in terms of records for building permits for that property. So you can monitor the status of your application. Once the permit's issued, you can monitor the status of your inspections. And if you look at the bottom right side, newly added this year, we've included information about upcoming inspections. So once you've gone online and requested an inspection, the information will show up on the bottom right hand side here as a confirmed inspection for the date that you've requested. And this information is the inspection request. The inspection status is real time, updated every half hour. The application status is updated on a daily basis. Next slide, Peter. And of course, the big launch for us this spring was the MobiInspect solution for our inspections group. So this solution is a remarkable step forward for our group. Up until now, the inspectors come in the morning, they get their to-do list on a paper sheet. After, of course, we've taken about an hour in the morning to redistribute any of the calls, taking into account staff that have called in sick or staff that are on vacation. And then the inspectors go out for the day to conduct their inspections, come back at the end of the day, enter the results, at their desk for the day. So this solution allowed them to go out more immediately in the morning without having to wait for a redistribution of calls. The supervisors can do that redistribution throughout the day rather than waiting in the morning and sending them out. They can, our inspectors can enter real-time inspection results, which again are reflected every half hour on the GeoHub. And it also allows our inspectors to monitor what's going on around them in terms of activity or open permits. If for some reason they were to get ahead of their scheduled inspections and have some spare time, they can actually investigate, within the 500-meter radius of them if there are any open permits. Next slide, Peter. The other thing that this has been able to do is give us an optimal route designed for our staff in the morning. So MobiInspect takes all of your to-do list for the day, and it will map out the best route for you to attend each one of those sites. Again, this is sort of the first phase of the solution. Ultimately, will allow us to narrow down inspection arrival times so that the residents have a better idea of when they can expect our inspectors to show up on site. Next slide, Peter. So that was phase one and all of the accomplishments up until now. What I'd like to do is turn our attention to phase two, which is the contractor app of MobiInspect. Now, this solution is intended to address that piece of the pie that allows residents and contractors to have an itemized list of deficiencies that may occur after an inspection so that they can go in and address each of them. So the idea is that this app will work very much like the MobiInspect app works for our side, for the inspector to manage their workload. It will be the same type of interface for the contractor or for the resident. They would receive this app as a free download with their building permit. And it would allow them from their smartphone or device to book inspections without having to go through our website. And it would also allow them to see the results more immediately, even than the half-hour refresh rate that we have on the GeoHub. The other thing it will do is provide us with a little bit of back-end integration. We will be able to pick from a list of deficiencies in Amanda, and that list of deficiencies will populate again for the resident or contractor, and give them some information to follow through before calling for the next inspection. Next slide, Peter. This will be obviously supported with the full back office integration with Amanda that I had mentioned earlier, that we will have no longer the need to manually transfer information from SharePoint into our back office solution, and we hope to create a collaborative digital space for our plans review and our designers and or our residents, so that we can actually have real-time conversations about the plans that are being reviewed, discuss some of the issues that have come up in the review, and have a little bit of back and forth conversation in real time. It will also allow us to have document version control, so that we can properly track the submissions that come in for each building permit. And so, Peter, next slide, please. So the next steps to all of this, I do want to outline that these things will take time. So we are commencing the procurement process this year. We've been at the table with IT already to discuss how this will roll out, and start working on the RFP documentation, so that we can go out and procure a solution for both the contractor app and for the back office integration with the online applications. And so the timelines we're looking at, I think, are roughly having the procurement completed by the end of this year, budget approval for any capital request coming in the spring, and then we'll start working on the integration immediately after that. So in Q2 of 2021, we will hopefully be starting on the integration of the online applications and the contractor app. And so recognizing that these steps are going to take a little bit of time, what we did was develop a bit of a video. And Peter, I don't know if we can share this video, but the intent of this video was to have something for council and the mayor.
Oh,
to have something for, yeah, sorry, Peter, you okay?
yes, sorry, I didn't realize my mic was on. My apologies.
Yeah, so the idea is to have some media for council and the mayor's office to share with the residents and the contractors, to let them know that we understand what they're looking for. We are working on it, and we hope to have something in place by the end of next year. So if you can play that video now. I think the sound, Peter, is not working.
So, Mr. Chair, just bear with us. We'll give one more try to see if we can get the audio working.
We may want to note, I guess, that if the audio does work, everybody should have their mics on mute. Otherwise, we'll get a little bit of feedback.
the 9th most populated municipality in all of Canada. The city of Brampton. People from all over the world call it home. It is a popular landing place for new immigrants. To house this constant influx, to provide places to work, play and thrive, the prime requirement is buildings. The cornerstone of this surge forward is a building permit.
The inspections process also needed significant reinventing. And, this time last year, the inspectors were going out into the field with paper lists of inspection assignments, and it provided a very ineffective and inefficient way for our department to manage the workload of those inspectors.
That idea of being able to watch paper flow through departments, I think it might be even stronger if the system had some ability to monitor and track activity, inspections, inspection reports online, than even if you had to wait for everything to be consolidated manually and then recirculated back to the builder or stakeholder.
So the phase 1 solution that we've rolled out for our inspectors so far, called MobiInspect, is essentially a smartphone app that allows our inspectors real-time access to their workload, to inspection results, and to enter inspection results. The other thing it does is create efficiencies in terms of mapping out the inspector's route for the day. The inspector has 10 or 12 inspections, maybe 15 inspections across Brampton for the day. This app will actually map out each one of those inspections and provide the most efficient route for the inspector for that day.
It can give me a real location based on my map, and I can comprehend where that site is related to where I'm standing. And now follow up on a resource online. I can save stuff, I can dump it directly to the system. The benefit of going directly to the system is now I can offer that information up to others, whether it's my own staff, which is a priority, whether it's my administration, which is another priority. I need that information getting back to the office immediately so everybody understands what state we're in. And thirdly, it gets back to the client more immediately.
Smoke detector's not working.
This was done to ensure our building division team could continue to deliver effective and efficient services to residents, the construction industry, and to further support the city's efforts to attract investment into our local economy. I'm happy to report this project has been a stellar success. In the first 2 months alone, we have seen an incredible 34% increase in demand for permits over the same period last year.
The other aspect that we need to develop further is full integration of the digital permit application process. So rather than providing comments, having the designer try to interpret those comments and provide an answer back, we've established this collaborative space where they can work together to resolve the issues. So the other benefit to this solution is that there's a possibility that we can backwards collaborate with other departments across the city. So not only are we setting up collaborative space for the building division and the designers and contractors, but we could be setting up a collaborative space between departments in the city to provide efficiencies in the overall process.
A large percentage of our residents in Brampton are applying for 2-unit dwellings. A key requirement for them is that every time an inspection is conducted, they need a clear idea of what needs to be fixed in order to pass the inspection and to understand what the next step in the process is. So what we need is a digital way for the inspector to pass on this precise information.
So the next phase in the development of this mobile solution for inspectors is for us to be able to provide very specific feedback to the residents and contractors. So the path we're setting on now is going to allow us to have the inspector pick from a set of deficiencies that are identified in the regulations in the Ontario Building Code. And we'll be able to send those deficiencies directly to the resident or contractor as soon as the inspection is completed. And that way, they'll have a step-by-step list of things that they can follow to correct in order to book the next inspection.
At City Hall, we have had to face these challenges and the challenge of COVID-19 head on to come up with new and innovative ways to carry on the people's business. This new mobile solution for inspections complements the tools we have at our disposal today and the ones we are developing for tomorrow.
Due to COVID was to introduce a virtual way to do inspections, and we've called that remote video inspections. The remote video capability that we're embarking on will be that we can allow various people from different locations to converge into one inspection. So if you've got multiple disciplines of inspectors that need to be in attendance, or if you've got engineers or site supers that can't be on site but want to attend for the inspection, we can use this integrated remote video inspection solution virtually. This solution positions Brampton to be among the first, if not the first, municipality in all of Canada to provide that level of virtual secured integration among those groups. Very exciting technology. Okay, thank you, Peter and Tony, for getting that to work for us. So the video obviously is a little bit long in terms of being able to use in short Stratcom clips, but I know that Jason is working with us to potentially shorten that up to allow us to make it more useful in terms of communication with the public. But if you have any questions on the innovations that we've done this year or the roadmap moving forward, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick. I do see a question from Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Rick, for the presentation. Good video. Rick, I just want to make sure, actually two questions. One, when will that next phase be when it integrates and there won't be the data entry driven to connect with Amanda?
So that procurement is going to take place in the fall of this year, or I guess by the end of 2020. So we've got I think a kickoff meeting happening in the next week or two, and we're working on the RFP for that. So it will go out to tender soon, and we hope that we'll have a choice made by the end of the year. If we have the support through the 2021 budget process. Now, I should mention that there are two aspects of it. One is the back-end integration, and one is the contractor app. The contractor app needs budget approval in 2021. The back-end integration already has a capital approval that happened back in 2014 when the project was paused in 2015. The capital money stayed where it is, so we do have already the capital approved for that. But it will likely take, in all honesty, the better part of next year to integrate it before we launch it. So I'm hoping that by the fall, I'm thinking around September of next year, we'll be able to go live with that online integration.
So good, because I recall talking to you back in 2015 about a budget for, I guess it was for this that was looking at being held, but roughly in the area of, I don't know if the entire amount was 500,000, 300,000, or what's the budget that was approved back in 14 held for this? Yeah,
through you, Mr. Chair, the budget then was, I think, in the neighborhood of 500,000, and then we had top-ups over a couple of years with other projects that had been closed off, but had excess budget remaining. I think we rolled those into that capital request, and so I think, we have close to $700,000 in that capital. I don't anticipate that it will be nearly that expensive, but the people that we had chosen to provide that solution for us are no longer in the picture in terms of development. the company CSDC had split off into two groups and sort of sold off the development aspect of it. So we allowed that purchase order to lapse, and so now we're back at the drawing board with respect to procuring that solution.
Okay, and then that next phase, the contractor phase, you had mentioned. Do you know what the ask is for budget this coming cycle?
I believe it's in the neighborhood of 25,000. It's not an expensive solution, but if you'll allow me just to go back and double check my budget request, I can confirm that for you. Okay, and then just the next question, or more of a request, that our assistants get trained and full access to the system to ensure that we can try and head some of the questions that we get from residents off prior to it potentially going to it by way of an email to yourself or to staff. Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be my pleasure. Yep.
Excellent. Those are my questions. If you can't find the ask, then maybe you can come back at a later date and provide it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I see no further questions. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente to receive the staff presentation. That the presentation by Rick Kennard, Director of Building and Chief Building Official regarding Technology Improvement Roadmap to the Planning Development Committee meeting of October 26th be received. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. No, thank you very much, Rick. We go to item 7.2. Regarding the city-initiated zoning bylaw amendment to align lodging house definition with provincial legislation. Are there any questions? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure whether we were going to get any type of presentation on this, but I had a few questions because I find a lot of the wording in this somewhat confusing. So was there going to be any type of presentation? I guess not.
Hi, good afternoon. Through the chair to Councillor Bowman, it's Michelle Gervais. I'm the author of the report. I did not put a presentation together, but I can assist, and hopefully along with my colleagues, Rick Kennard in building and perhaps Elizabeth Corazola in zoning, could assist in any questions that you may have. Okay, thank you.
Now, it says the bylaw 332-2013 that with this new change, there would no longer be any requirement for a business license.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Peter. Perhaps I can start to answer that, and Teresa Olson is on the line, who's responsible for the business licensing bylaw. All that's changing is the definition of a lodging home to be more than 4 to align with the provincial requirements. The current definition is, I believe, more than 3.
Okay, so, but it does, yeah, it does specifically say there, this change would no longer require a business license. So to me, that indicates to me anyways, maybe it's my misunderstanding, that anybody who wants to set up a rooming house now rather than a second unit, for example, doesn't need any type of license to do that. Is that true?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a license would be, under the business licensing bylaw, would be required for a lodging home to which there are more than 4 lodgers within that dwelling unit, and also complying with the other requirements of the business licensing bylaw, as well as the zoning bylaw.
Okay, because the way I read it, Peter and Michelle, the way I read it, it opens up a can of worms. It doesn't appear to me, and maybe it's just the language, it doesn't appear to me that this is just a simple change to meet what's in the building code and the fire code. From what I'm reading, it looks like we're making it way easier for people to open up lodging houses as opposed to second units in their home.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Elizabeth Corazola. Perhaps I can offer some clarification in terms of the changes that are concurrent changes to both the licensing bylaw as well as the zoning bylaw. And I do want to emphasize that in no way do these changes enable the creation of a lodging house in additional areas of the city, in zones that would otherwise currently not permit a lodging house. All it does is change what is then defined as a lodging house from being currently in our zoning bylaw and licensing bylaw more than 3 individuals. And now this will change it to more than 4. So I think that if there is any suggestion in the report that a license is no longer required, it's only no longer required where there are only 4 or up to 4 individuals sharing a house. Any more than 4, it would still certainly require a license and also be defined as a lodging house for the purpose of the zoning bylaw, which, as we know, is not a permitted use in many single family residential zones.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for clarifying that. Now, does that have any impact on Paul Morrison's group of bylaw going in and laying charges for illegal lodging houses?
Through you, if perhaps, I'm not sure if Paul is on the line, but if I can just speak to my experience with their investigations, they certainly do look to confirm the number of residents and lodgers that are sharing a household. And if that is now found to be more than 4 individuals, they will proceed to prosecution and enforce as they normally would, with the slight increase in the number of residents, so that not only does it contravene the zoning bylaw, but now will also be a violation of both the fire code and the building code as well.
Okay, so if I can just ask this one more time, just to be 100% certain, this has no impact on our ability to lay charges. All it does is just change the number from 3 to 4.
That's correct, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bowman. We would no longer be able to lay charges if there were only 4 residents sharing, 4 lodgers sharing a household. However, if there are more than 4, it in no way impacts or changes our current practice for enforcement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, through the chair. Actually, that's very helpful clarification, Elizabeth. Much appreciated. So I see in Mississauga it says a lodging house shall only be permitted in a detached dwelling, and no lodging unit shall be contained in a basement. Is that something we have defined in our bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a similar description in our current zoning definition for the term lodging house. The only change that we're proposing today is with respect to the number of lodgers that can occupy a lodging unit. So while we are undertaking, and I know policy staff is undertaking a review of things like student housing and lodging house and sort of the broader definition of whether to expand that definition or, like Mississauga, restrict it so that you cannot have a lodging unit in a basement apartment. That is something that's being reviewed, but it is not impacted by this proposed amendment today. We're strictly harmonizing the numbers together with the fire code and building code. I can confirm, though, just in case there's any misunderstanding, what this will permit is 4 lodgers in any single dwelling unit. So that could conceivably be 4 lodgers in the main unit as well as 4 individuals in the basement apartment.
Okay, so we will be looking at reviewing the requirement for basement because according to the Mississauga definition, that would address the number of occupants in the basement. If we had something in our bylaw to address the number of individuals downstairs for safety reasons and such. Do you know when we will be getting back that review?
I'm hoping that Bob Bierke is in the meeting. He would best be able to advise on where policy planning staff stand with that amendment.
Thanks very much. The review is I think, as you said, underway. We're hoping to bring it back this fall. later this fall. But I can give a specific update after I check in with the team.
Okay, great. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you very much. As I see, there's no further speakers.
Councillor Madero says, Councillor Singh, can I speak? Sorry, the chat function's not working for me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to speak on the last delegation too, so I just want to thank staff for both the previous initiative and this change that we're bringing. I think, with the various town halls I attended, these were huge pain points for residents, and seeing that these changes are coming and we're taking seriously the concerns of our residents, it's very appreciative. And thank you for staff for everything that you've been doing. And I guess with the clarity and harmonization of the building code, with the fire code, I guess the next step is making sure we're doing our enforcement and making sure that any violators, that they're being dealt with. But these pain points were conveyed quite clearly from residents, and it's good to hear that they were also heard in this process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So no further speakers.
Councillor Madero's I'm on, please.
Okay.
The chat block's not working for some reason.
Okay, Councillor Fortini.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Just a couple of questions to staff. When we start doing these and we're giving out the license, what steps are we going to be taking to enforce it when we're having a hard time now already on basement apartments that we don't have entry? And it's very hard to get search warrants. So do we have any plan after if someone has more than 4 people in? What do we do? That's my first question. My second question is, we haven't looked at, again, and I mentioned this many times, on our sewers and our infrastructure, when you got some old parts of Peel Village and south of Queen Street, anything in north and North Park of Bramalea, where the sewers on the roads are only a 6-inch, 8-inch wide, they can't handle the water, and then we have all these extra residents or lodging homes or basement apartments in, and when we get a big storm, they back into people's homes. So are we looking into those too?
Councillor Fortini, through you, Mr. Chair. This is Rick.
Yes.
I'm wondering if maybe we can continue this conversation with the report that's coming forward around second units. Obviously, it does also relate to lodging homes, but maybe we can have a fulsome discussion around regional services, municipal services in general, with that report, and we can take any information back and also tied in with the review that we're doing with the lodging and rooming houses.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. We just got to look at that, very important. The enforcement part, I know we have building codes, we set these bylaws, but if we don't have entry, it makes no sense. And I don't want this to grow out of proportion like basement apartments, and then we can't put we lose control on it, and also for our infrastructure. Thank you. I'll wait for that report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fortini. So I do have a motion here. Sorry, so I see there's no speakers. Okay, the chat function appears to be working again, just as a reminder to councillors. So I do have a motion here moved by Councillor Fortini, if he's okay with it, which is around that the staff report regarding city-initiated zoning bylaw amendments to align lodging house definition of provincial legislation to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 26, 2020 be received, that the zoning bylaw amendment attached here to as Appendix 1 be adopted on the basis it represents good planning, including that is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to a place to grow, growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, and the City official plan for the reasons set out in the planning recommendation report dated September 30th, 2020. That staff be directed to prepare an amendment to Schedule 17 of Business Licensing Bylaw 332/2013. Amend the definition lodging house to generally correspond to proposed zoning bylaw amendment attached to the report as Appendix 1, and that council hereby determines that no further public notice is to be given pursuant to Section 34(17) of the Planning Act. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote.
Oranges.
Does anyone Okay, no one opposes, so there are no objections, so the motion carries. 7.3 is in consent, 7.4 I believe is in consent. So we go now to item 7.5, staff report regarding review of regulatory model governing 2-unit dwellings. The report is a response to a motion introduced as a previous meeting asking the province to grant the right of entry to building inspectors to inspect second units. Do any members have any questions about this report? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. I think you knew I'd have questions about this report anyways.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job. There's a lot of things covered in there that I really appreciate. I did have a question though, probably for you, Rick. I know you're on the line. There was mention about some of the things that we're asking for will require additional staff in the budget. I think there was 2 specific areas where we were going to require additional staff. Can you speak to that?
For you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor Bowman. The additional staffing results really from a steady and sometimes sharp increase in the number of applications that we're getting. You know, the City of Brampton has done an extremely good job, I think, legislatively to streamline these applications and allow them to come through. I mean, we've got a very effective task force in terms of driving activity to our counter. We've got a very effective application process in terms of accepting the information. But a couple of things have happened, you know, sort of unexpectedly this year. One of those being the revocation or the lifting of the requirement for a third parking space for a second unit. So that opened up an opportunity for a large amount of basement finish, quote unquote, applications that we had received over a number of years, commencing in 2015, that, you know, were issued strictly as a basement finish because they could not get a registered second unit due to the parking requirements. And there are various applications that came in that were refused for the same reason. Well, with the lifting of that requirement, all of those that were refused, you know, immediately came back to us with applications, and as well, many of those that we had issued as basement finishes came back to us with applications to register as a second unit now that parking requirement was lifted. And so what we saw in this year was a very, you know, regular pace of applications for the City of Brampton. We had received about 1,300 applications until June. And then between June and July and August, we received, you know, as many applications in that 2.5-month span as we had received the entire 6 months prior to that. And so there was a big spike, obviously, in interest and in the number of applications that we received, which created, you know, a massive backlog for us in the building division. It was unanticipated for us, but it was also compounded by COVID-19, which you may or may not be aware, committee, that the level of home renovations and construction in general has skyrocketed as a result of people staying at home. And quite frankly, looking around their house, realizing that there's projects that need to be done, and now's the time to do it. So we've seen a sharp increase in the number of applications for miscellaneous residential construction, as well as second unit applications. And many of the second unit applications are actually there or coming in as a source of income for these homeowners. And so that's one aspect of a requirement for additional staff in the building division. And we have submitted a request through the 2021 budget process to make up for that increase in activity. The parking requirement has also you know, created a situation for our partners in enforcement in needing additional enforcement staff to regulate the on-street parking that is happening where second units have been registered and do not have the third parking spot or additional parking that may be required for those tenants that are renting.
Yeah, and that was something that caught my eye, Rick, because I believe we could see in the next couple of years much larger issues with that decision, because if all these second units and they do have a car which parks on the street, when we get in time for snow and snow plowing, this is going to cause major headaches for us. So we'll wait and see if that happens. The other question I had, Rick, or the observation, you mentioned that we are 10 times higher in the number of permit requests than other municipalities.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as a minimum, we're 10 times higher. I mean, I benchmarked our neighbors in Vaughan, in Markham, in Milton, in Oakville, and in Mississauga. And Markham didn't have any applications for second units at the time that I spoke with them back in March, and so I didn't include them in the charts in the report. But our closest municipality in terms of numbers is Mississauga, and they had issued I think it was 389 second unit permits last year in 2019, whereas we had issued 3,100. And so, you know, Oakville, I think, had 4, Milton had 14, Vaughan, I don't recall off the top of my head their numbers, but we are sort of an island on our own in terms of second unit registrations. And as is noted in the report, I think, you know, we've become sort of the de facto go-to for these surrounding municipalities to ask questions around, you know, what is it that's driving the numbers? What do the applications look like? You know, we've created application packages that are in 6 different languages. We've done illustrated guides to provide designers as much information as possible on comply. So, you know, the city of Brampton has truly been a leader in terms of how to efficiently implement this registration solution. But the unfortunate thing is we've also become a victim of our own success, because we are now, you know, backlogged significantly in terms of being able to get those reviews completed and out the door. You know, and we've taken significant strides in the last few weeks to move that forward. But we are, you know, by far outpacing every GTA municipality in terms of those numbers.
Thanks, Rick. And just one more quick question about, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 months ago, time flies with COVID. We had asked, or I'd put forward an ask to see if we could investigate the possibility of licensing second units. Will that report still be coming in the future?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have to be honest with you. I don't have it on my radar, but I can check in with our policy group to discuss, you know, whether that's a better option moving forward. I do recall the conversation, and I think you had a few aspects that, you know, made an interesting case for licensing in terms of, you know, if they had multiple bylaw infractions, for instance, that we would be able to, you know, revoke a license. So if you can leave that with me, I will circle back with our colleagues in policy and see if there is any consideration of that happening.
Thank you very much. Good job, Rick. Thank you to you and your group, and happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor. And to Mr. Chair, do we want to reopen the discussion with Councillor Fortini on the infrastructure aspect of it that he had brought up with the lodging house discussion before we move on?
I'll proceed to Councillor Vicente, and Councillor Fortini maybe after, because I have Councillor Vicente here on the board. If you would like, just let us know in the chat, or you can chime in after Councillor Vicente. Councillor Vicente, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess Councillor Bowman should have imagined that I would certainly want to speak after hearing some of the comments. And I just want to, I was reminded last week during a conversation with a resident here in the city of Brampton, how when I first moved to the city, my mother and I moved into a basement apartment. And before that, I had on different times in my life lived in a second unit in a home in Toronto. And so I think perhaps, and we all bring different perspectives to council. I see second units, basement apartments, or whatever you wish to call them, as an important part of any community's housing stock. It's important for those who need the space. It's also important for those who depend on the income to make ends meet month to month. Now, with respect to the impressive uptake in the numbers for secondary units and how we are outpacing the rest of other municipalities here in the city, just a question, if I may, to staff. For how many years did the city of Brampton not permit second units being constructed in Brampton homes? What were the dates between when they were no longer permitted and then when we resumed permitting them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Rick. So I think I can answer that. The province, for a brief period between 1994 and 1995, allowed second units as of right. That ended, I think it was July of 1995, and until I think it was September, it might have been August of 2015. That 20-year period did not allow second units in the city of Brampton.
Thank you, Rick. And through you, Chair, back to Rick. During that time, was the case in municipalities like Toronto?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think that Toronto was the same. The city of Toronto has consistently allowed second units in their existing neighborhoods, and
right.
I can't say for sure if that was the case with the city of Mississauga, or I can say that with Oakville and with Milton. I know we've had this conversation that it was the same with them. They did not allow the second units, until after the provincial legislation was put in place. But the city of Toronto, I think, has always allowed them. When I worked for a brief period for the city, they had a long history of second units and in existing dwellings.
Yeah, and I remember in the 1980s, my mom renting out a second unit in a house, and I don't know if it was legal or not. I was just a kid at the time, but considering how ubiquitous they are in Toronto, I imagine the City of Toronto has had a policy around second units for quite some time. And so it should be no surprise, I think, to any person who's looking at the City of Brampton, the city having for so long not permitted them, it shouldn't be a surprise that we now have a substantial uptake by residents who perhaps already had them and are bringing them into compliance, or new ones that are being built. And with respect to those who had them and now they are bringing them into compliance, that is precisely one of the desired outcomes of the City of Brampton moving to legalize secondary units. And further, I'm in fact pleased to hear that with the elimination of the parking restrictions, we have even more people being able to safely build and put in place secondary units in their homes. That is, in fact, a very good news story, not something that we necessarily need to shy away from. It's something that we can be proud of. Now, with respect to the parking, and I want to emphasize how important it is that we recognize that some homes have one parking spot, some have two, some have four, some have, if they're very lucky, six, or sometimes there are very few cases where there's more parking. And so the number of parking spots that is available to a homeowner and the people who reside there is directly proportional to the actual physical space that is in front of their home. And if a resident chooses to park on the grass, that is no longer permitted here in the City of Brampton. And if they fly in the face of our established regulations and choose to park on the road outside the times when they are permitted to do so, we have bylaws in place to deal with that. And I just a question through to bylaw, do we have individuals who don't have a second unit in their home, sometimes breaking parking bylaws and having their vehicle, like, do we only have parking issues with homes that have second units?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Rick again. I don't know that bylaw is listening in on this particular meeting, but I can answer on behalf of Paul in that, yes, of course we do have parking violators that do not have second units.
Very good. And so I just want for members of council and for members of the public to understand that for myself, and I know Councillor Santos would agree, that parking should not be a factor in determining how one lives. And also, I think that it is very clear here in the city what the rules are around parking, what is permitted, what is not permitted. And it should not be a factor in whether or not we allow a second unit to be built or not. It shouldn't be a factor on what we allow in terms of our planning and development. Parking is what it is, where it is permitted and where there is space and where space is allocated. Certainly a vehicle can be parked. But I just grow a little bit, I guess, weary of when we continue using parking as a reason to, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, I just think it shouldn't be a factor. And so thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to express those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. Councillor Fortini.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yes, back to Rick, the commissioner there. So we have to look into like the infrastructure, and I'm going to agree with Councillor Vicente. You know, parking should not be an issue, but anything to do with the infrastructure, if it affects others, and also, you know, how are we going to regulate them? That's what my concerns are.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Rick, and so I guess two aspects. Yeah, the parking, I don't think, you know, if you don't mind me saying, is an issue that we're trying to use necessarily to prohibit the existence of second units. We are, however, recognizing, I think, the need that there is an increase in resources required to maintain the enforcement of what is required in terms of parking. And so I believe that was the intention behind the point in the report, not to necessarily deter anybody from registering a second unit. With respect to the infrastructure strain, the report, you know, doesn't dive very deep into this topic of discussion, and there is opportunity, I think, to further explore this question, because I don't think, you know, well, I know that it will take much more time and effort to coordinate with the region and with our friends in Public Works to find the answer to this. But I think the question at hand is where you have second units as prevalent as they are in the city of Brampton and in any one particular subdivision, are we adversely affecting the infrastructure that was built there under the premise and under the development charges that were collected of single-family dwellings or a mix of single-family, singles, and towns? You could potentially be doubling the population numbers within that subdivision. So did we correctly design sewer capacity for that? Did we correctly design water capacity for that? Did we correctly allocate recreation for that? Did we correctly allocate healthcare for that? Those are all questions that, you know, that I didn't have available to answer in information available to answer in the report. And so, Councillor, I think if you want us to explore that aspect of it a little bit further, we would need some time to look into what those actual effects of the increase in numbers are. And, you know, quite frankly, I don't know that the building division is the right person to take that, but we could certainly coordinate that information with the appropriate departments and come back to you.
Okay, yeah, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but here we are. The region gives a rebate to put backwash valves so we don't get flooded. Then the region gives a rebate to take out your downspouts, make sure they go on the lawn, so to avoid water around the home so you don't get flooded. And here we are, the region giving rebates, put it on the lawn so the water doesn't go in your driveway, go on the road. We as a city say, you can't widen your driveway. There's too much water going on the road. Our infrastructure can't handle the sewers and backs up into people's driveways. So we got to cut your driveway. But meanwhile, we're coming along and saying, it's okay to put group homes and basement apartments in those areas where they have a 8-inch main sewer on the road. And you're right. Those homes were designed for single family dwelling at the time. And that's what the sewer capacity holds. So there's a lot of old areas. Now, the new area, I think some people don't understand. We got storm sewer coming out of the house, and you got sanitary sewer. On the road, you got 2 pipes. The older areas, like mine, anywhere north of North Park and Peel Village and all, we only have a 4-inch main pipe coming from the house. They're all, not even a single plastic. All those clay pipes just joined beside each other, and they go into an 8-inch line on the road. So the region came along 3-4 years ago to avoid these floods and started closing the catch bases. So the water flows on the roads and it disappears slowly because the catch bases can't hold it. So we got to look at all that before we say, okay, we're allowing group homes in certain areas. We're allowing basement apartments because something like my house gets flooded. Who's going to pay me at the end? The insurance is not going to cover it, at the end. So there's going to be thousands of homes, and we went through this around 7, 8, 9 years ago when everyone got flooded, that big rainstorm. Half of Balmoral, all my area, people came through the window wells, it came from the sewers. People had 4 feet of water in their basements. So that's what we have to be careful where we put these places. Now, if you have the new area where you have bigger pipes and you have sanitary and storm sewer, that can handle it. It's designed for that, but not the older areas like Peel Village and downtown Brampton. There's many areas that's not designed for that. So can we please look into that before we make decisions on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente, Councillor Fortini. I believe I have Councillor Palashi now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some good comments that are happening around the table here. I guess one of my comments would be in relation to Councillor Vicente's comments about parking. So I don't have an issue with second units. My only issue is, and I'm going to say that, and I've looked into this a number of times, and councillors may agree or disagree. 100% of the complaints that I get that relate to somebody parking on the street directly relates to a property that is that currently has either second unit or illegal, or most of the time, actually, out of that 100%, it's most of the time it's illegal units that we're finding are the complaints that we're getting through the office. And Councillor Fortini brings up a really good point. We rely heavily on the studies that the consultants and planners do for new subdivisions, infills in the city, and then we look at what Councillor Fortini was talking about was, and then that subdivision evolves over time, and the number of units or the population increases by way of second units and whatnot, which again I don't have a problem with, but I wonder how, and just to Rick's point about what we maybe need to do some extra work in looking into, maybe we need to go back and look at one, a new subdivision came in with the original, under the original official plan, an amendment was made to increase the density, which then changed the studies warrant, whether traffic studies, noise studies, and whatnot. And and then over time that subdivision evolves, maybe it's time that we go back into other areas of the city and put those studies, basically put them to task to see if they're still relevant or still meet those current studies based on what was provided. So I think that's something that I would like staff to maybe undertake or look into. Can I get anybody from staff's comment on that and what that would entail? If you understand what I'm saying, I can elaborate a little bit more.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Pleshy, it's Rick. You know, I don't understand any of the planning stuff that you just said. So I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is I am going to take your direction. We will sit down as a team, and we will talk about the best approach to doing that. Maybe we can pick a target area that we have fairly recent reports for that has been an area of high activity with respect to second units. And we can do a bit of a test run to see whether there's relevance still to those reports that were submitted for that development and what the differences are.
Yeah, and thanks, Rick, and I don't fully understand or know like kind of where the bar is set in terms of the studies, and it seems like every report or every planning application that comes forward to us, they're always meeting or they're under the threshold of whatever that bar is. So from my understanding, a lot of the studies, in particular the traffic impact study that I think was essentially designed by consultants, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's been in place since it was, and it has not changed since it was originally brought forward. And I at one time I knew the date of its existence, but now I don't. And that's just one particular study that I was thinking of. But for us to have that opportunity to look back and see what what work goes into there, if we're able to kind of get some of the numbers and put the two face to face, and see how we look today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will take that direction back to our group, and we'll have that conversation and come back to you with a plan. Thanks, Rick. And I guess my other comment would be, and I said this before, and I know members have, it's happened to all of us. Every 4 years, you go out and you start knocking doors, and you get to a couple doors, and I know some of the houses that are in the area that Doug and I represent have next to anywhere from 10 to 15 young adults living in these houses, and that's where the balance of me trying to support second units and try to find what the option is to ensure that all of these young adults are safe living in some of these houses, and it's whether it's I could name some streets and addresses, as I won't, but some of those houses that have cars parked either on the street and they're going out every few hours just to move the cars around. Cars are parked on the grass, and there's just a number of young adults living in unsafe conditions. What are we doing? How does this help to ensure that these whomever, if it's young adults or I don't want to hold it just to one demographic or anything, but how do we ensure that these people are safe living in a house that was designed for 4, maybe 8 people, but there's 15 living in this thing that's not up to standards, up to code. Mr. Chair, it's Rick again. So yeah, I mean, there is a larger conversation that needs to happen, and part of the report that came forward today did request that some changes be made to the statute, to the Building Code Act, to provide us stronger rights of access. I don't know that the province will support that or not, but we do have the ability to get a search warrant in those circumstances, and we do have the ability to go in, and where there is a situation where a house has been turned into a lodging home, we can issue orders and unsafe orders and take action. So I guess the important thing is that, what's been very successful for second units is the fact that we've had a task force dedicated to doing that. And I don't know if lodging homes are, a big enough issue or concern to the city, then maybe we need to explore piloting something similar for that, or expanding, the existing task force to take on the illegal lodging home reviews as well.
So I think that's something that we should be thinking about for sure. Okay, and then Rick, just the Airbnb bylaw, where are we on that? When is that coming back to council?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pass that on to planning if somebody is on the line.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon. It's Jeff Humble, manager of policy planning. We do intend to bring forward a report to council here in the fourth quarter, so we will have an update on the short-term rentals.
That's the fourth quarter of this year?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And is Alan on the call? I heard him earlier.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, through you, Councillor Plushy, I'm here, yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Just the conversation that Rick and we've been having just about going back and maybe picking certain areas of Brampton. You'll work with Rick on kind of what that looks like and maybe provide a future update to council.
Indeed, Councillor Plushy, we'll work just really as Rick was saying, as a team to pull together the information that we think really is pertinent to really trying to have some assessment in that way, and we'll work together to bring something back to council.
Okay, and I think that would help members of council, and by way of, when we have the official plan and then developers come and put forward amendments to the official plan, we have a broader look and awareness of what that could potentially mean to, the future subdivisions down the road. So we're not in areas of almost borderline emergency. Well, when it comes to, floods and stuff, which what Councillor Fortini was referring to ensure that that we're okay down the future. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paleshi. So we do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman. And I think we'll take it as read. Just because I'll give it just people want to read it, what's on. Okay, so we do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Vicente. Over to you, City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So members of committee, a recorded vote's been requested on staff recommendations for 7.5. All in favor, please indicate. Councillor Dillon. Councillor Dillon. I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini. Councillor Fortini.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Willens.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Vicente.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yes, Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. And Chair Medeiros?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, 10-0.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is 7.6. The item was considered at our last meeting on October 5th and referred back to staff for further consideration and report back before the end of the year. A copy of the original staff report and related correspondence considered at the October 5th committee meeting is included with this item for reference. Do any members have any questions about this report? Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks staff for bringing this forward here today. So just a question of clarification. Does staff require additional direction with respect to conversations that we had both at the last meeting and that we had this week? I know Councillor Bowman was present as well, in terms of preserving or reserving sections along Queen Street for higher density, more transit friendly development.
So through the chair, Bob Bierke here. We don't. If you would like to provide further direction in probably recommendation 4, that would be certainly helpful. But I also think the next steps for us reflect the discussions that we had at 2 weeks ago, and then again we can initiate that process.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. Because I just want to make sure we're very clear, because in the report, it talks about in order to encourage greater densities, the mixed-use designation has been revised to require a minimum height of 3 stories. And so when you set a minimum height of 3 stories, that would allow, for example, a townhome, which I think members of council agree is not what we would like to see along this strip and would not meet the kind of density that we were looking for. So I want to make sure that we are not, and the whole purpose of this quick pause was to make sure that we are very clear as to what it is that we're looking for. And I'm not sure we're there yet.
So through the chair, there's an alternate Appendix A, which we I think had provided through the clerks and the councillors. So that Appendix A identifies a smaller area of the Springbrook Tertiary Plan, and the remainder that isn't included in that appendix is what we would then go back to focus on. So that would be different than just changing the height, the modest changes that were identified, and this would then enable us to go back and do a fulsome review of the properties along Queen Street, which is what we would anticipate following the adoption of this portion, anyway, the Springbrook Tertiary area.
Thank you, Bob, and through you, Chair. So with respect to Schedule A, I'm looking at, can we have that put up on screen, please, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So Charlotte, can you bring up the revised plan provided by...
On page 294, I believe.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so perhaps planning can clarify. There is the supplementary report, which I believe is page 294, but we've received from planning staff a subsequent revised tertiary plan. So I need clarity on which plan you're requesting to put up.
So I would, from my perspective, it would be the the revised plan that was sent out just recently, not the one that's in the agenda.
So Charlotte, can you bring up the plan that was attached to the email from Claudia, please? Her email from earlier today.
Peter.
Yes.
Hi, Peter. This is Claudia. Can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the email that Charlotte is showing is the one that we revised today. So the last page shows what the new boundary of the tertiary plan would be.
So Charlotte,
thank you, Claudia. Are members of council in receipt of this revised map?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they have not. The City Clerk's office has not distributed this revised map to committee because it hasn't been introduced yet. perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, can planning staff confirm that this is the revised tertiary plan that's on the screen now?
Yes.
Yes, I can confirm that that's the correct one.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, to Claudia, no one knows this better than you. So the areas that we see highlighted, either with color or hatched patterns, those are the areas that we are approving today. And the remainder that are not shaded along the Queen Street corridor are to be further defined through staff's work and a consultation process. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Vicente. I don't see anyone else on the board. So we do have a motion moved by Councillor Vicente.
So through you, Mr. Chair,
yeah.
so there is a revised motion that we're going to bring on the screen momentarily.
Okay.
And it shows in red the adjustments from the motion as contained in the staff report published online. So I believe, Councillor Vicente, this is the motion that you are proposing to move, which reflects that revised tertiary plan that was just shown on the screen.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, taken as read, I'll give a, would you like a recorded vote, Councillor Vicente?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. So is there anyone opposed to this motion? Okay, no, there are no objections, so the motion carries. Thank you. We now have committee minutes. Brampton Heritage Board, October 20th. Do any members have any questions about the minutes? No, I guess Councillor Vicente, again, I'll have you approve the minutes. And that the minutes of the Brampton Heritage Board meeting of October 20th, recommendations to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of October 26th be approved. Is there anyone opposed? No, we proceed. So there's no new business, referred matters, correspondence. We go on to Councillor question period. Are there any questions? Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was trying to get on for the Heritage Board minutes, but I wasn't able to. But I can just ask my question here. My question through you, Mr. Chair, is to, I think Councillor Vicente is on the Heritage Board. Councillor Vicente, with the discussions on the old church on here, Ontario, the old Snellgrove Baptist Church, I believe. Could you enlighten us to how the discussions were going about that old church?
I would be happy to, Councillor. So the Heritage Board received a delegation from a representative of the church. That is the church, the large church there that also has possession of the small heritage building, which is also a church. And they described some of the difficulties and challenges that they have had over many years in dealing with the heritage property, and that their continued possession of it is becoming increasingly challenging for them. The building cannot be moved. There is no one who wants to buy the building. And of also very notable consideration is the fact that the region of Peel, which is basically right adjacent to the church, is not interested in it, and no other municipality has expressed any interest in purchasing or with the intention of then upkeeping the building. And so they wanted to look at the opportunity to apply for a delisting from the heritage designation. Staff were asked if there is and what is the process for initiating such a request, and staff did advise that there is an application that an individual who is the owner of a heritage building would have to fill out, and then that initiates, I'm sure, a great deal of review on staff's part, which could then, I imagine, and staff can provide greater clarification for removal from heritage designation. And so the conversation was there, and staff have committed to work with the church to try and find other ways to assist them with their current application to build a recreation center, easements, etc. And that's where we left it there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vincente. Just if there is anybody any staff on with this, and I can take it offline if there isn't, but from my understanding, there was this building was only listed in the last 2-3 years. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I think it's been listed for a while longer than that. To clarify, we're having a lot of very specific conversations with the Coptic Church and their members, and there are potentially 2 parties that may be interested in pursuing projects in the Snowbird Baptist Church. And so we are actually working with the properties there, and as well pursuing the other option of whether it's an application for demolition or de-designation with the current property owners. But we are looking at basically all the options on the table and putting a lot of resources to try and help them facilitate that.
So I'm not sure about the application for demolition. It's the first I've heard of that. I've been trying to work with the church. I was trying to work with raising the roof prior to them having internal issues and them no longer picking up the phone anymore. But maybe there's an opportunity where this then we could re-engage with raising the roof. They just delegated us to us not too long ago. But I've been on council since we designated it. So if it's not 2 years, at least in the last 5 years that it was designated, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's more than 2, and probably in that 5 year. But I would say exactly what you're suggesting has happened. So we've actually re-engaged with raising the roof. They've got some new staff in place that have a development background and are quite interested in looking at this as a project, which would actually take place on site. They're not proposing to move the church, but we're actually moving through that process. And so any alterations that can happen with the property being designated, that doesn't get in the way at all. But we're continuing to work with the church and the other parties that are interested in the site.
So I guess it's typical that it just seems that anytime that there's a heritage designation on a property, then there's only a fine number of people that can actually do work on heritage property, and I guess they charge. It's like potentially maybe living up in Muskoka or something if you want to do a renovation, and all of a sudden the costs increase, and which I didn't ever think that was the case, but the more I talk to people, the more they confirm that, yeah, it does increase. So any of the parties that I've talked to, one in particular that wanted to open up their own congregation, their own church, and use this, it was that money that was needed to bring this up to the standards of the heritage. So it's not that we want to get rid of the building altogether. It's the fact that there needs to be the balance, and I think in this circumstance, delisting may be the balance to keeping this very pretty old church where it is, but opportunity is what's needed. So thank you to staff. Thanks, Paul, for answering some of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I do have, so Councillor Vicente, I see you on the board. Was that what you already responded?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to clarify that, and in case it wasn't clear from my statement, that they're looking to submit an application for removal of the designation, not for demolition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I see no further questions, no closed session, and our last is adjournment. Our next meeting is November 16th, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Santos to adjourn today's meeting. The Planning Development Committee to meet again on Monday, November 16th at 7 p.m. or at the call of the chair. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Nope, there are no objections, so the meeting is adjourned. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, practice physical distancing and wear a face covering with inside public spaces. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee. We're just waiting for the live stream to end momentarily. And the